Hey everybody, it's Boo Ray Perry from Tampa, Florida, and today we are going to talk about the first 7 things that I do to my camera when I take it out of the box. Now, before we get started, just a reminder, I've got a fantastic podcast, and you should check it out. It's called PHOTOBOMB. It's available anywhere that you find podcasts, and you're going to enjoy it. I promise. It's a great thing to listen to when you're driving or when you're sitting around doing some editing or working on your files. It's just like hanging out with a couple of photographer friends. Once again, PHOTOBOMB. Check it out. You're going to like it. Also, below in the description, you'll find links to my gear page, and on that page, you'll find all of my equipment, both my professional gear that I use for shooting weddings and events and portraits, as well as my Fuji gear and the accessories and stuff that I use, the bag that I use, everything that I use with my Fuji gear when I am traveling. Please think about using those links when you have to go to Amazon.com and buy something that I've recommended here on one of my channels, because it does keep this channel going. All right. We're going to talk about the 7 things that I do the minute I take my camera out of the box. If you're like me, you get a new camera, you're very excited, you open up the box, you take your camera out, you turn it on, and then you're like, oh my goodness, all of these menu settings. What do I need to fix first? What do I need to set first? It can be overwhelming. So what I did was when I got this camera, and this is my third one, this is the 100V. I had the S and I also had the F, and now I have the V. So when I got the V and I took it out of the box, I was careful to write down the 7 things that I did immediately when I took this camera out of the box, because these were the 7 things that I knew that I would need to be sure and set in order to have a good shooting experience right out of the box. There's plenty of time later to adjust the other thousands of settings that are in the camera, but right off the bat, there's a few things that I want to be sure I set up so that I know that my very first day, I'll have a nice shooting experience. I'll do another video later about all the detailed stuff that I do, but right now, let's just talk about those first 7 things. All right, here we go. The 7 things that I do to my camera immediately when I take it out of the box. Now, what's not included is the 2 things that you have to do to your camera. When you turn your camera on, it's going to ask you some questions. It's going to ask you what language you want to use. It's going to ask you to connect the camera to your phone. So I'm not including those in the list because I assume that everybody does that automatically. You kind of have to do it. What I'm going to do here is tell you the 7 things that I do to my camera immediately once I get it out of the box and before I start shooting. After I have been shooting for a little bit, then I go in and I make a lot of other adjustments to the camera. That's when I go in and I really start to fine-tune the camera. But before I can even get started with my first picture, there's 7 things that I want to set in my camera. Here we go. Number 1, on the image quality menu, you want to go right to image quality. And you want to decide what kind of images you want to shoot. Do you want to shoot JPEGs or do you want to shoot RAW? Do you want to shoot full-size JPEGs? Do you want to shoot full-size RAW? Do you want to shoot RAW and JPEG? There's 5 different options here for you to choose between. Now, I'll leave it to you to decide what you want to do. I can tell you that I personally use this camera in fine JPEG. I shoot JPEGs almost 99 to 100% of the time. Sometimes I'll use RAW, but most of the time JPEG. And the reason is because I'm a professional photographer and I shoot in RAW professionally all the time, and I edit tons and tons of RAW images. With this camera, I don't want to have to do all that work. I want to be able to just take pictures because I enjoy it and have fun. And also, this is a mirrorless camera, so I'm able to see what my final image is going to look like in the viewfinder with this camera, which is something you can't do with a DSLR. So it's much less likely that I'm going to be doing a lot of adjustments to my image after the fact. And any adjustments I do are usually pretty minor and can be done to a JPEG no problem. I tend to think of RAWs as being something you need when you have to make a really big adjustment. That's when you need the RAW file. And that really doesn't happen with this camera. So I like to keep it simple, and I shoot in fine RAW all the time. The next thing you want to do is go to RAW recording. I just told you I don't ever shoot in RAW. But if I do shoot in RAW, I want to be on Lossless Compressed, because Lossless Compress makes your RAW files smaller. So they take up less room on your card, and they're easier to move over to your computer, and it's lossless, which means you don't lose any quality in the RAW file at all. So there's just no reason not to use this setting. So those are the 2 settings I fix in the image quality menu right away. Then we drop down to the autofocus and manual focus menu. I want to just point out one more time, here in the image quality menu, that you'll see all these other settings for color and sharpness and noise reduction and clarity and etc. I don't mess with any of those right off the bat because I want to shoot with the camera a little bit. I want to get a feel for what the camera does before I start to go in and tweak it and fine tune it. right? So I like to keep it more as much at its factory settings as I can. So next menu, autofocus and manual focus. The first thing I'm going to go to right there and fix right off the bat is right there. Autofocus plus manual focus, and I want this setting to be on. And what this is going to do for me, it's going to fix it so that when I am using autofocus, all I have to do is turn the front focus ring and I will instantly take over with manual focus. So let me show you what that looks like real quick. So let's say I'm taking a picture here. Now I've put down the trigger halfway and I've focused right there. And now all I have to do is grab the front ring and turn it, and bing, I'm in manual focus mode. And I love this setting. I love that all I have to do is grab that ring and instantly I'm in manual. And if I let go and do it, now I'm back in auto. If I let go of the ring and just repress the button, I'm back in auto again. So I can quickly go back and forth, right? So what you just saw, by the way, if I haven't pressed this button and I turn the ring, I'm going to zoom. But if I press the button and turn the ring, manual focus. So that's what that setting does for us. Which brings us to the next setting that I want to fix. Oops, sorry. Which is MF Assist. It's right underneath AF/MF, MF Assist. And this is your manual focus assist. And this determines what the screen looks like when you use manual focus. So I have mine set to focus peak highlight. And the highlight I have it set is red high. And that's that red that you see right there. Autofocus, and then turn the ring to go to manual, and now you see that anything that's in focus will be very, very bright red, and I can clearly see that that is in focus. You can see here I'm moving my focus point, moving it to the back. See, it's going further back now. Now it's coming forward. And this is just a wonderful, wonderful, very intuitive system that Fuji has in these cameras. And so once you get used to using it, you don't ever want to not have it available to you. So it's one of the things that I absolutely look for and set immediately when I get a new camera and set it up. Okay, there's one more thing in the autofocus, manual focus menu that I want to set. And it's right here, touchscreen mode. Now, it may be that we don't have to actually change this because I don't remember what the default is. See, I've never had a touch screen before. This is my first camera with a touch screen, right? And so I didn't know what I wanted here, but I knew I wanted to set it up. So I went here to touchscreen mode and I set it to autofocus so that when I touched the back of the camera, it would automatically focus on whatever I was touching. And then I would pull the trigger to take the picture. But then, within an hour of doing that, within my first hour of actually using the camera, I realized that that was too awkward. Autofocusing by touching and then using the trigger, I realized that if I'm touching something to focus on it, just go ahead and take a picture. Just go ahead and get it over with, right? So I immediately went back and changed it to touch shooting. And I don't remember, someone's going to have to tell me in the comments if you know what the default setting is. The default setting may be touch shooting. So it may be that I actually don't have a list of 6 things here and not 7 because this is actually already set for you. But I wasn't sure, so I wanted to include it just in case. I have mine set to touch shooting, and I figured that out in the first hour of using the camera. If I had ever had a touch screen camera in the past, I would have known going in and I would have fixed it right away. All right, so now we're going to pop down to the next setting, the shooting settings, and we're going to go way down the screen until we get to ISO auto settings. The ISO auto settings, this sets the parameters that you're telling the camera, here's the parameters I want you to stay in whenever I use the auto ISO, and I use auto ISO all the time. So there are 3 auto ISO settings, 1, 2, and 3. So I have one set to a default sensitivity of 160, a maximum sensitivity of 12,800, sorry, and a minimum shutter speed of 1/60th. Now, here's the thing you're going to notice about my settings. Auto 2, the settings are exactly the same. All I did was raise the shutter speed to 125. Auto 3, the settings are exactly the same. I just raised my shutter speed to 1/500th of a second. I use my auto ISO merely for determining what my shutter speed needs to be in a hurry. So if I'm taking pictures of things, and if I'm just standing around taking some pictures of plants or something like that, then Auto 1 works just fine for me. I keep my minimum shutter speed at 160 or higher, and I keep my default sensitivity as low as it can go. The camera's going to keep the ISO as low as it can go. But if I've got a little bit of movement, I go to Auto 2, and if I've got a lot of movement, I go to Auto 3. And that's all I have to do. Now, there's a whole other video that I'm going to make about all the detailed settings that I do on the camera. And at that time, I might address also the whole default sensitivity thing, because there are going to be people, I'm sure, who say, I like to shoot at ISO 200 or 300 or 400 because I like more dynamic range. I personally, I'm not a big fan of trading off dynamic range for noise. So it's just hardwired into me to always shoot at the lowest ISO that I can. I like the images that this camera produces. I like the dynamic range this camera produces at 160. I don't have a problem with it. So I just don't feel the need to tell the camera to always shoot at 400 or 600 ISO. So I keep mine at the lowest I can get it, which is 160. All right, that's number 6, which brings us to number 7, the final thing that I do. And it is all the way down here at the wrench, the setup menu. Power management. Go to power management, and where it says auto power off, I think the default is 2 minutes. I set it to 5 minutes because 2 minutes is not enough. If I don't turn my camera off, it's because I want to be able to pick my camera back up and take a picture instantly. And so I want it to stay on for at least 5 minutes before it shuts itself off. So I go ahead and turn my auto power off to 5 minutes. And that's it. Those are the 7 things that I do the minute I take this camera out of the box. Hey, I just want to remind you that if you like the channel, please give me a like, give me some comments below, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. All that helps to keep the channel alive, and I will see you back here next time.